Let's start with Tito. We're looking at his earlier influences. What would have influenced his sense of belonging? Also that need to reclaim his country back, given that the homeland system was implemented. But also just in the inclusive growth strategy that we saw over the years. How would you say that all played a role in his legacy?
Well, I think the conditions under which he was born, and you look at his generation, and you look at where he came from, and all those worked towards molding a man that he became. And then, of course, once he was molded, then he was able to impart or to even inspire other people. Yes. Because, so many a times, the conditions under which you live or you are born do tend to define you. And then we look at how he became what he became. You can see that those conditions had played a huge role. But also, interestingly, Mpiwe, was that he then never forgot where he came from. That's why, as we sit here today, we are watching proceedings from the very place that he came from. So that tells you, you can become anything you want, or conditions can define you towards a particular situation. But the most important thing, never lose track of what of where you are or what you had become. So, and that is inspiring, and I mean, in so many ways, through his career, through his work, or of course through his bit of arrogance. I mean, you must know he was
his ability to assert
because
himself.
He knew exactly. Because I mean, a human being is defined by so many things, and that's what defined him, and that's what attracts you to that individual.
I quite like the example that you used, when it comes to the conditions of where he lived. And I marvel at the symbolism of the renaming of his ancestral home from Bordeaux to Mboweni. Exactly. Because Mboweni, it basically means in the pot. And you can tell that, he was really cooked to be the man that he was. And, he advocated for the rights of the poor. He advocated for the rights of, the workers in the different capacities that he served in the economic cluster. And his policy framework, while he was Labour Minister and as well as Finance Minister, it led to the creation of an inclusive economy. So, and I want to pick your brain, both of you, Sophie and Mzwai, that in terms of the inclusive economy, in terms of what we're seeing today, the rate of unemployment is still high in South Africa. The rate of poverty is still high in South Africa. And, do you think that the condition that we live in today, which of course led to the creation of the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, do you think that it spit in the face of his efforts?
Well, I think when you look at what he was about, when you listen to Professor Sehwai Santo, who spoke to our colleague in Lesotho, you can hear that from his education, he really focused on issues that are related to economy and the South African economy. Yep. Because Professor Sehwai says he focused on the issue of mining, which was the main or backbone of the economy of the apartheid South Africa, even before then, but also agriculture. But the question was, how do you turn these important sectors to represent the poor and the marginalized? Yes. That was the focus during his studies and what they did in Lesotho to mold him. And from there, you get a situation where he's part of the ANC economic cluster, working with people like Max Sisulu, Thabo Mbeki, the economists, and contributing to the drafting of Ready to Govern in relation to political perspective, but also the RDP document that was supposed to be a guiding document in changing the lives of ordinary people. And they decide that he becomes a minister of labor, because labor was quite an important integral part of the transformation of the country. You needed to move with speed to change the labor laws. And because he had studied that kind of economy, he was better placed, much as he was very young. Right. And from there, he's taken to the Reserve Bank, because the intention was to transform institution, and the Reserve Bank was quite critical, and to change how it operates. And that monetary policy, the aim is to ensure that you have resources so that you can change the lives of the people. But as you do that, you realize that it's not as easy as all that. And therefore, there was a contestation in terms of how he went about the implementation of that monetary policy and whether it did translate in creation of jobs and addressing the issue of poverty. But for them, the intention was, let's have resources.
Yes.
Because you can't change the lives of the people if you don't have resources.
True.
And therefore, the fiscus must be sound, it must have money, you have to have that monetary policy. Therefore, Reserve Bank must work with Treasury. And that's why you have Trevor Manuel, and that's why they work together. And later you see his love for ordinary people. Because sometimes when people are in office, you don't see the love for ordinary people and who they are.
Yeah.
Based on what Mzwai said about his background, you see him going back to the countryside and always talking about, let's do this, messages on social media in relation to formation of a state bank and how interventions can be made. Because during the interviews before in exile, when he was interviewed by senior economists in media overseas, he kept talking about social fabric of the country in terms of economic perspective.
Yes.
And that is why people don't know he defended socialism, saying that people believe in socialism when he was interviewed because of their situation. And therefore, he even wrote a document for SACP, or he was editing a SACP newsletter in London. And therefore, there's a lot that we don't know about Tito.
I want to pick up on Sophie's point about addressing the structural inequalities, because when he became the first black governor, a SARB governor, Membathisi Mdladlana obviously became the Minister of Labour.
Yes.
I mean, he then also passed away. We earlier on spoke about he would have, just reflected on his life and time and influence. I wonder what their relationship would have been like as well.
Necessarily, Elizal, you take over. Remember, this is still the same party.
Yes.
You take over from someone, and then there would have been a lot of engagements. And there was, not there would have been. I mean, earlier this week, Membathisi Mdladlana was featured, as we indicated earlier, on our show, on our platform, Sophie, reflecting on the life and times of Tito Mboweni, telling us the kind of fundamentals that he found when he took over as the Labour Minister himself. And somehow fate had it other way. Yeah. As we always say, I mean, we obviously don't know how fate would lead us. But given the kind of expertise, the experience, the activism, that really defined them, as she was explicitly pointing it out, you would see that these are the people, this is the kind of a generation that had a particular mission. I mean, the country was, in inverted commas, still at formative stage in terms of its development. And then you could see why they put some of those fundamentals. I mean, you talk about someone now in terms about your rights, because you feel you are being unfairly treated, all those things. Those are the fundamentals that were put in place by those individuals. And the other one put them in place, and the other one had the responsibility to implement them. So here we are as a country, still young, but we are moving on. And everywhere you go, they will tell you that as a country, I mean, she deals with things that mainly deal with international. They will tell you, the international bodies will tell you to say, the good thing about South Africans is that their institutions are strong. Whatever happens, our institutions are strong. It is thanks to the individuals that we are speaking about today. All right,
Mzwandile Mbeje and Sophie Mboweni, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for reflecting on the legacy of Tito Mboweni. We do appreciate your time.